On July 23, 1980, Shannon Moore Davis and her husband headed out for an evening horseback ride. Less than an hour later, Shannon would be dead, a victim of a broken neck after falling off her horse. The authorities considered it an open and shut case. But over the next few months, cracks in the story began to emerge, and little did Shannon's family know then, it would be almost a decade before the case was finally closed for good. So, if you like this kind of content, drop us a like and make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our content uploads. Shannon Moore was a 25-year-old nurse originally from Toledo, Ohio. She met her husband, Dave Davis, a year earlier. She had just broken off an engagement and was living back at home with her parents. Dave was an orphan at a young age, won several awards for bravery in Vietnam, had been successful in real estate, and finally settled down at 35 years old on a country farm in Hillsdale, Michigan. He had recently lost his wife in a tragic auto accident, and Shannon quickly took a liking to him. After just 7 weeks, Dave and Shannon married in Las Vegas. Initially, Shannon's parents, Bob and Lucille Moore, didn't approve of the marriage, but as time went on, they grew to like their new son-in-law. Bob would later describe Dave as a man's man. He loved to hunt, fish, just a rugged outdoors person, and the type of guy any father would want for a son-in-law. On that July evening in 1980, Bob and Lucille were at the farm when Dave and Shannon left on horseback and watched them ride off. They stopped by the farm of their neighbor, Dick Britton, and then off they went down the trail. 25 minutes later, Dick Britton saw Dave riding across his field toward him. Dave told Dick that Shannon fell off her horse and hit her head on a rock. Dave jumped into Dick's vehicle, and together they drove to where the accident occurred. Dick Britton said Shannon was lying on her back with her eyes closed, her blouse was partially unbuttoned, and her shoes were off. Together they loaded Shannon in the vehicle and sped off to the hospital. As they arrived, Dave was performing CPR on his wife, as by that time she wasn't breathing and had no heartbeat. When the doctor came into the ER to examine Shannon, her pupils were fixed and dilated, and he pronounced her dead. Dave called his in-laws, telling them Shannon had fallen off her horse and was at the hospital, but did not give them the worst of the news. Lucille Moore was informed of her daughter's death by Dick Britton and a sheriff's deputy outside the hospital. Dave told his in-laws that Shannon wished to be cremated. A heated argument started between Dave and his in-laws. They were insisting Shannon be taken back home to Toledo and buried. Dave said he didn't have any life insurance on Shannon, nor could he afford a traditional burial. Bob Moore agreed to pay all the funeral expenses back in Toledo if Dave would release the body to him, but Dave refused. By this time, Dick Britton told Dave he had only been married 10 months and he was going up against Shannon's parents. Only then did Dave agree to a traditional burial back in Toledo. This was not the first thing to strike Lucille odd. After the burial arrangements were made, Lucille recalled a conversation she had with her daughter after returning from her honeymoon. She told her mother that Dave had taken out a large life insurance policy on her. She also noticed that Dave had some scratches on his face, but she kept these details to herself, for the moment. After accepting Dave's story of the accident, the police and the medical examiner ruled Shannon's death an accident. She had broken her neck when she fell off the horse. Bob and Lucille Moore laid their daughter to rest in Toledo 3 days later. At a gathering after the funeral, Lucille confided to a friend that she thought Dave killed her daughter. She didn't believe Dave's story, and she didn't accept the ruling of an accident. While speaking to Dave's family and friends, they found out almost everything they knew about him was a lie. Dave's parents said that Dave had never been in the military, let alone to Vietnam. Just the fact that his parents, who were from Flint, came to Shannon's services proved that Dave had not been raised as an orphan as he had claimed. They had raised him themselves. A few days later, he left for a vacation in Florida. On the way, he stopped off in Toledo to drop off some of Shannon's things to the Moores. Lucille was so disgusted at the sight of Dave that she refused to hug him as he was leaving. While Dave was on his way to Florida, the Moores took a drive up to Hillsdale County to the sheriff's office. They told the authorities about Dave's lies, most notably about the life insurance. The sheriff, who was also suspicious, had done some digging of his own after the accident. He found that Dave didn't take out a single life insurance policy right after he and Shannon were married. He had taken out 3 in Shannon's name. All in all, if she were to die as a result of an accident, he would stand to gain over $324,000. Dick Britton also let the police know his suspicions. He was convinced that Dave had killed Shannon, but he didn't know why. Dick said he was told there was no life insurance policy. Dick couldn't believe it when the detective said there were actually 3. Looking into these policies, the police learned that Dave had requested a double indemnity clause, meaning that the payout would be double if the death was ruled an accident. Under tremendous pressure from Shannon's family and friends, the police reopened the investigation. On August 25, 1980, her body was exhumed. During the examination, authorities could find no evidence of foul play, although the official cause of death was changed from a broken neck to severe head trauma. Again, the incident was ruled an accident and the case was closed. The enraged Moore family, as well as Dick Britton, sent letter after letter to the Michigan Attorney General's office. Dick Britton talked to a reporter from the Detroit Free Press and revealed each and every lie Dave had told. The Free Press launched their own investigation into Dave Davis and found several insurance claims. A barn had burnt on Dave's property and the claim was paid out. Before long, the house burnt to the ground as well, again paid out by the insurance company. On October 12, 1980, the front page article on Dave Davis and the riding accident ran in the Detroit Free Press. The article described a con man, a cheat, and someone who may have killed his wife for the insurance payout. By this time, Dave Davis was in Florida most of the time and had a new girlfriend. The Free Press article convinced Dave to sell the farm in Michigan. He told Dick Britton that he could no longer live there after the article of lies and untruths had run. Shortly after the article was released, the Michigan Attorney General's office assigned Detective Don Brooks of the Michigan State Police to investigate. After initially reviewing the case, Detective Brooks was confident that this was actually a murder investigation. By now, David started receiving checks for the insurance policy payouts. Bob and Lucille Moore ended up filing a lawsuit to block these payments. Lucille even paid a visit to the medical examiner's office, demanding that tissue samples be sent to the Medical College of Ohio in Toledo. Interestingly, the pathologists there found an unknown compound in the samples. Detective Brooks began looking into exactly what types of substances Dave Davis would have access to. Before long, he found out Dave had studied pharmacology in college. As Dave owned a farm, he began looking at drugs he would have used to treat his farm animals. Using a list provided by a veterinarian, Brooks and local pathologists found one drug that Dave could have used: succinylcholine. Succinylcholine is a powerful muscle relaxer that paralyzes all muscles in the body, including the diaphragm. It also breaks down into natural compounds in the body, making it almost impossible to pin down as a cause of death. More often than not, victims of succinylcholine poisoning appear to have died of natural causes. Now, Detective Brooks formed a theory as to what happened. He believed Dave immobilized Shannon with the drug, inflicted the injuries consistent with a fall off a horse while she was still alive, and then waited for her to die. However, the pathologists in Ohio could not match the succinylcholine to the mystery compound in Shannon's tissue using the equipment on hand. They would need more precise equipment. The one place that could help was a lab in Sweden. 6 weeks later, the Swedish team found traces of succinylcholine in Shannon's tissue. Shannon's body was exhumed a second time, now almost a year since her death, this time to look for needle puncture wounds. They found them, one in the shoulder and one in the wrist. Later in October 1981, Michigan authorities issued a first-degree murder warrant for David Davis. Authorities had no idea where Dave was at that time, but they did have a plan. Dave was due to appear in Hillsdale County on the lawsuit over the insurance money, so the police kept the warrant quiet and planned to arrest him then. Not surprisingly, Dave didn't show up. The Moores won the insurance suit by default, and the judge awarded every cent of the insurance payouts to them. Police would later learn that Dave was sailing in the Caribbean with his new girlfriend, and that his lawyer called and told him about the warrant and told him to turn himself in. Dave Davis promptly disappeared for almost 9 years. On January 3, 1989, a woman living in Hawaii contacted the Michigan State Police after watching Unsolved Mysteries. She knew a man who looked just like the Dave Davis mugshots, named David Meyer Bell, or known as Rip to his friends. This immediately drew the interest of Detective Brooks, as one of Dave Davis's nicknames as a young man was Ripper. She revealed that Rip was now a pilot in American Samoa and had lived in Alaska and Hawaii previously. Almost immediately, Alaska provided a copy of his Alaska driver's license, and David Meyer Bell was found to actually be David Davis. 3 days later, on January 6th, FBI and Samoan police waited for Dave at the Pogo Pogo airport, where he would be reporting for work. He was spotted walking to the terminal. An agent yelled out, "David Davis?" Dave turned, and when he was approached by agents, he claimed he didn't know who David Davis was. He was then asked if he was David Meyer Bell, to which he said yes. He was immediately arrested, and during the flight back to Michigan, finally admitted that he was actually David Davis. He had been living in American Samoa since 1985 in a new home with a new wife. Once back in the Hillsdale County Jail, Davis maintained his innocence. Dave even told Detective Brooks that once they got this mess all straightened out, Dave would take him out for a beer. On November 28, 1989, Dave Davis's murder trial began in Hillsdale. The prosecution contended that Dave Davis sought out Shannon Moore only to murder her for the insurance payout. Davis was found to have asked several women to marry him prior to Shannon. Each one refused. Once he married Shannon, he had his victim. Experts testified that although the succinylcholine paralyzed every muscle in Shannon's body, she remained conscious and fully aware of everything happening to her until she died, as Dave Davis watched. The defense countered that the prosecution could not produce the syringe Dave used, nor could they prove that Dave ever possessed the drug. On December 5, 1989, after just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found David Davis guilty of first-degree murder. On January 16, 1990, the judge sentenced David Davis to a mandatory term of life in prison. During sentencing, the judge noted that Dave's crime was even more despicable than a contract for hire. When asked if he wished to make a statement, Dave very plainly said that he was guilty of no crime. The prosecutor wrote a letter to the Michigan Department of Corrections outlining Davis's life as a fugitive and the time and manpower used to track him down, recommending he never leave maximum security as an escape risk. He was incarcerated at Marquette Branch Prison, a maximum security facility in the Upper Peninsula, where he exhausted all of his appeals and died on November 9, 2014. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Sheldrake Files. As always, if you like this kind of content, Drop us a like and make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our content uploads. So, for the Sheldrake Files, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.